Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. I have an 8.5 by 11 layout today in celebration of World Book Day. That was a few days ago and I didn't even know it was a thing, but my scrappy acquaintance Cheryl Ashcroft posted her digi layout over in our Scrap Happy community website, and I was very inspired by her layout, mostly because I was excited about World Book Day and not even knowing it was a thing. And also because she used the Traci Reed Ex Libris Galaxia, I believe is the name of it. I'll put it up on the screen if I got it wrong. But anyway, that is a book lovers themed digi collection. And Traci Reed always offers portions of her collections in printable versions. So I will be doing some hybrid work for this layout, but I'll put that at the end of the video. If hybrid's not your thing, don't worry, you won't be interrupted with it. But if hybrid is your thing or you're interested in it, stick to the end and I'll show you just a few quick tips that I used when I put this layout together. As I've been chatting, you can see I'm working with some photos. These are small prints of the book covers of all the books I read in 2021, so I'm documenting my reading last year. I thought I would leave these all on 5x7 prints in this grid format, but there were too many to fit on one print and not enough to take up all the space on a second print. So I took that second batch of photos and tucked them onto some extra space on something else that I was printing for another project. So now I have this awkward set of extra prints. So I'm going to end up cutting everything apart and restructuring these photos into the body of my layout. Before cutting them out, I was sure to put the date on the back of the photos, and the date that I'm using is the date I finished reading the book. And that way, once I've got them all cut apart and I have a pile of them, I can put them back in order. And then I'm using just a scrap piece of paper that was packaging left over from some supplies. I'm running some temporary adhesive on that, and then I'm putting those photos onto that scratch piece of paper in order to keep them tidy, keep them in order, make sure they don't get damaged or go missing while I'm working on the rest of the layout. So that's all the photo prep I did, and we'll go ahead and move on to the body of the layout. I have pattern paper here that I created in my software, and that's the hybrid part of this layout, using those Traci Reed digital supplies. I also have her embellishment, what she calls stickers, so they're printables that you can cut apart, and I do the cutting on my silhouette because they're set up nicely to do it that way. And so here is the structure of my layout. I've got this circular print, and there's one circle for each month, and then I'm going to adhere those tiny photos onto those circles that match up with the month that I finished reading them. And then that whole piece with the photos is going to become a pocket for my journaling, because this is a whole year's worth of reading that I have to cover. I have a lot of journaling that I wanted to include on this, so that pocket's going to hide the journaling, and it's also going to give me some space for embellishing. Now, as I put those photos down on there, I'm adding a date stamp to each of them when I finished reading them. And I like that because it kind of reminds me of those old-fashioned library pocket cards. And that's actually what that background pattern paper is. I know it's a little hard to see on the screen, but so those two pieces go together thematically for me, and that was fun. And off screen, I went ahead and chose an alphabet set and created my title. And part of what came up as I was looking at all of these books, and I keep track of my reading in Goodreads, as I was going through my Goodreads account, I realized that I'm pretty stingy with my star ratings on books. And if you pay close attention to this, I'm reading the same authors over and over again, so I must like them. And yet most of these books come out at 3 stars, and so the story kind of incorporates why I think I tend to give most things 3 stars. So that's what my journaling's about, and that's where my titling ended up going with. And then I sorted through all of those embellishments and pulled out a few things that were my favorites that I thought could work well for this layout. And of course, there's always more stuff that are my favorites than I can possibly put on there. So I'm going to have to pare it down even more later. But what was really nice is that there's a little tab with the star rating, and so that tucked right nicely into my title, and I got that on there. I did want to add more embellishing to the front of this layout, but it's pretty busy and crowded already, and especially with those dates stamped around, there wasn't a lot of room. So I just put a couple of things, and I'm not so sure those things were a great idea, but they're there, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the journaling portion. So with my journaling, I did size it in my editing software to be no wider than 5 1/4 inches wide, and that's based on how wide there is inside of that pocket. And even at this, it was a little bit tight. And it ended up being 2 pages because I needed to make sure it wasn't too long to fit on the inside of that pocket as well. And as I was stapling those 2 pages together, I got this idea that I should use a brad to hold all these pieces together. And instead of folding the first page apart to read both pages, you'll just kind of slide them around. And that was a fun little hinge mechanism with that brad. And brads are used to fasten papers together anyway, so it felt very booky to me. And that was fun that I had that thought as I was working. And then at this point, it's just a matter of adding some fun bits and pieces. I really like the colors of this Traci Reed collection, so I wanted to add some of these embellishments to bring in pops of color, as well as just little bits and pieces of theme. And I'm trying to match up items from the embellishments that kind of go with my journaling, but some of them are just the wrong size and they're not fitting. So as much as I wanted to get that moon on there to show that I'm mostly a bedtime reader, it didn't get that on there. But I got these glasses on there because I do have 2 pairs of glasses and I switch back and forth between them often because I have terrible eyesight and I have to have a special pair for reading and a special pair for everyday distance stuff. So that is how this layout came together. It's not super complicated, but it did take a while because there is a lot of little fiddly bits. So if you are interested in the hybrid process that I went through to create those pattern papers, let's go ahead and turn to that. And if you're done with this video at this point, thank you for watching. I do appreciate it, and I hope you'll come back for other layouts in the future. So I'd like to talk about a few things I did digitally with this layout. First of all, I don't have the actual pattern papers for this collection. I have the journaling cards. So I took a journaling card that was already kind of a patchwork look, and I copied and pasted it multiple times until it fit on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And now I'm doing a vellum technique where I create a new layer, I fill it with a color, and then I change the opacity of that color until I'm happy with it. And I tested out both a light gray color and a white color to see where I wanted it to go. Because that pattern paper was a very bold, saturated color, I didn't want it to compete with my upper layer. And then the second technique was I created all of these circles, and they're just using the circle shape tool, and then I added an outline to it using the edit menu and the stroke feature, and you can change the color and thickness of that stroke. So now I have a circle that will have pattern and a dark outline. And then I'm going to choose the pattern. So I'm on a Mac, so I keep all my Digi supplies organized in the Photos app on the Mac, and I do keep a separate library from my personal photos versus my Digi supplies. And when I'm looking at these supplies, I can just, I believe it's Option click, perhaps it's Control click, I can't quite remember. On that, it pops up a menu, and then from there I can tell it to open directly in Photoshop. Now I am using full Photoshop, however, a lot of these techniques will still work in whatever photo editing processor that you're using, as long as it allows you to do layers. So once I have that pattern opened up in Photoshop, I copy and paste it into my document, and I create a clipping mask to that circle. What that means is that pattern is going to stay contained within that circle, and particularly within the colored part of the circle, not that outline shape. So this will leave me with a pattern with an outline circle to build the new pattern paper for this layer. To create a clipping mask, you need to have your pattern layer right on top of your shape layer. And then you need to hover over the pattern layer, hit the control button, and it'll bring up a menu so that you can create clipping mask. Once you click that, it'll limit the space of that pattern to the shape. And I want to thank Cheryl Ashcroft again here because she showed a shortcut for this. If you hover on the line in between those 2 layers and hold down, I believe it's the Option key, it's going to pop up a little icon on your mouse that's going to allow you to just click your mouse, and that will instantly do the clipping mask for you. You don't have to pop up that whole menu. So Cheryl has helped me several ways on creating this layout today. So I will leave a link to her information so you can check her out. She's both a digital scrapper and a digital product designer. With my pattern now in place, I realized I don't need to do clipping masks for all of these other circles I created. What I need to do is delete all those circles and copy and paste what I've got. But before I copy and paste, these pieces are two separate pieces, so I need to link those together. So I'm going to select both layers and hit that little kind of infinity chain link icon, and that'll make it easier to copy and paste from that original shape. And now I have them in a grid all lined up and ready to go for my pattern paper. Only I want another step to this. I want a color behind these circles. So I use the eyedropper tool to select a color from within that print, and I just filled in a new layer behind those circles. So that is the final step in creating this pattern paper. Actually, there's one more little step because I am resizing that down. Because this is going to be a pocket on the front of my layout, I don't want it to be full 8.5 by 11. I want it to be smaller. So I did resize that, and that is the final step in creating this pattern paper. So now how do you print this? Because you have two different pieces that are visible, but you want to print them one at a time. So here's what I do. I will select all of the layers that go together in one piece that I want to be printed. And once those layers are selected, I can hit the little folder icon down there. And I don't know how this works in other software, but this definitely works in Photoshop. And I'm hoping Photoshop Elements should be able to do that for you too. And then I do the same thing for the other pieces that create the second sheet of pattern paper that I want to print. And you can see me turning the eye icon on and off for these. And whatever you see on the screen is what's going to print. So I will turn one on, print that, turn it off, turn the other one on, print that. I've got two pattern papers printed out of the same digital file. I know that was kind of a whirlwind of techniques. If you're new to anything hybrid, if you have any questions, do let me know because I will be happy to answer them. Thanks so much for watching, and I will be back on Sunday, May 1st with a brand new month of scrappy inspiration.